When I produced my video on the French crown jewels some weeks ago, I purposely left out the imperial regalia created in 1804 for the coronation of Napoleon Bonaparte. My justification for creating a separate video is that although there is some continuity with the regalia of the Ancien Regime, particularly in terms of some of the symbolism of objects, there were also differences in both the style and presentation of this new regalia and the robes that were a singular departure from past French precedent. Although some of the surviving items of the earlier Bourbon regalia, such as the sceptre of Charles V and the sword called Joyeuse, were carried at the coronation of Napoleon, a wholly new set of regalia was made for the use of him and his Empress Josephine. Of course, Napoleon's imperial coronation was also a departure in a number of respects from French royal precedent. For a start, it took place in a different setting to that of the Bourbon kings. Ross was eschewed, and instead the coronation on the 2nd of December 1804 was in the medieval cathedral of Paris, Notre Dame. Napoleon was also not content to be anointed and crowned by a simple archbishop. French kings had in the past been crowned by the Archbishop of Ross, but Napoleon's imperial pretensions required only the Pope's blessing. Now, Holy Roman Empress, and Napoleon considered his empire to be in some respects a successor state to the Holy Roman Empire, had travelled to Rome to be crowned in the Middle Ages, but Napoleon requested that Pope Pius VII travel to Paris to anoint him. Pius was a little cowed by Napoleon in some respects, and duly did what he was told. But when he arrived in Paris, he was informed by the French Emperor that there would be another change of precedent. Pius would be required to perform only the anointing and blessing, and that Napoleon, the self-made man, would place the crown upon his own brow, and would then in turn crown his Empress. Jacques Louis David was commissioned to capture this particular moment in a painting completed in 1808. And in the painting you can see both the surviving elements of the old regalia held to the left of the scene, including the sceptre of Charles V and the sword Joyeuse, while to the right of the action are the objects from Napoleon's new regalia. The central item of regalia Napoleon commissioned was a new French imperial crown, which he understood to be a recreation of the crown of Charlemagne, the coronation crown of French kings destroyed at the Revolution. Napoleon was keen to emphasise legitimacy through a historical connection to Charlemagne, the king of the Franks and the creator of the Holy Roman Empire, of which empire France was once a part. Napoleon was obsessed with Charlemagne and thought of himself as the successor of the Carolingian dynasty and the man to recreate a new Frankish empire. Napoleon even visited Aachen, Charlemagne's capital, in October of 1804 to pay his respects to his predecessor prior to his own crowning. His visit has been somewhat idealised in this painting by Henri Paul Motte of 1898. Napoleon may well have stood on the steps of Charlemagne's throne in the Palatine Chapel, as we see here, but he didn't see the Holy Roman imperial crown, which was safely away from his grasp in Vienna. Napoleon's crown resembles neither the Holy Roman imperial crown nor the medieval French coronation crown. In fact, it is unlike any other crown in existence. It was deliberately made to look antique. It isn't set with glistening gems, but with 40 cameos and carved cornelians, some of them dating back to the ancient world and bearing the profile heads of Roman emperors. The crown is simple in shape, and there are no fleurs-de-lis here, as in earlier French crowns. The circlet is decorated with acanthus leaves with some chaste decoration. From these leaves spring forth 8 peculiarly tall arches that join in the middle and are topped with a simple mond and cross. The cameos used were all selected from the collection of the Louvre by the Director General of Museums Vivant Denon. Well, I say the Louvre, but in 1803 Denon sycophantically suggested that the museum be renamed the Musée Napoleon. The cameos were all looted from other collections at the time of the Revolution, including from the treasury at Bourges and Saint-Denis. Vivant Denon was put in charge of commissioning the crown and the rest of the regalia, and may have had a hand in its design, but all the pieces except for the coronation rings were made by the Parisian goldsmith B&A. As well as the imperial crown, there was a second crown that Napoleon wore both before, throughout, and after the coronation ceremony, a crown or wreath made of 44 large and 12 small golden laurel leaves. B&A charged Napoleon 8,000 francs for this extraordinary object. In wearing this, Napoleon was making a bold statement about continuity and how he wanted to be seen as an emperor. Crowns of golden laurel were a symbol of power in ancient Rome. They were given by the Senate in Rome to prominent military leaders to recognise their triumphs. Later they became a symbol of imperial power and were worn by Roman emperors. Napoleon wanted to be viewed as a Caesar, a political leader who owed his rise to his military prowess. Napoleon's laurel crown did not long survive his fall and was destroyed in 1819. However, one single leaf from it survives. The story goes that when B&A first fitted the crown to Napoleon's head, the emperor complained of its great weight, and so the goldsmith removed 6 leaves. He gave one to each of his daughters an especially made, fitted Morocco leather case. One of these leaves passed down the family line and miraculously survived, and was sold at auction in 2017 for $730,000. At the coronation, the 14th century sceptre of Charles V, otherwise known as the sceptre of Charlemagne, was borne in the procession and was present, but it wasn't held by Napoleon except for the coronation portrait. B&A was commissioned to produce a new sceptre for him, topped with an imperial eagle. This too was destroyed in 1819. The eagle symbol once again had strong Roman military resonances. This new sceptre, a long staff, resembled the aquila, the eagle standards borne into battle by Roman legions. Napoleon had replicas of the sceptre cast, and 3 days after his coronation, wearing his coronation robes and holding the eagle sceptre, he distributed them to the regiments of his army, where they were used as regimental colours. Napoleon introduced an object into his regalia that had not been part of the French regalia before the Revolution, an orb. The orb, a globe of gold surmounted by the cross, was part of the imperial regalia in other states, in Germany and in England. The 1804 French orb was without doubt based on the orb of the Holy Roman Empire, the Reichsapfel, and Napoleon was once again self-consciously emulating imperial usage. The orb was also destroyed in 1819. B&A also made, at Napoleon's request, a new Hand of Justice, a replica of the traditional ivory sceptre of French kings. As the various originals had been destroyed at the Revolution, B&A based his new Hand of Justice on this engraving of 1750 by Bernard de Montfaucon, which shows one of the medieval examples then in existence. However, Montfaucon reversed the image of the medieval Hand of Justice and of the sceptre of Charlemagne, and so Napoleon's new Hand of Justice was a depiction of a left hand rather than the right hand as in the past. The Hand of Justice is made of elephant ivory. The medieval original was made of a narwhal tusk. This hand is supported on a knop that is made from a number of items that survived among the treasury of Saint-Denis. On the front there is a circular panel set with stones and a fine amethyst at the centre that is made from the bezel of a 13th century episcopal ring from Saint-Denis that was known as the Ring of Saint Denis. On the other side were placed 2 rock crystal cameos and an amethyst intaglio, also taken from the treasury at Saint-Denis. At the coronation, this object was presented as though it were the medieval original. As this was a replica of a traditional part of the Bourbon regalia, Napoleon's Hand of Justice was not destroyed in 1819, and in fact it was used for the coronation of Charles X in 1825, and that ensured its survival when the rest of the Napoleonic regalia was destroyed. Napoleon wore 2 robes called Grand Mantles for his coronation that reflected both tradition and innovation, and again were deeply symbolic. In form, they replicated almost exactly the robes worn by the Bourbon kings. They were made of silk velvet and lined and trimmed with ermine. However, they were quite distinct in their colour and decoration. The Bourbon coronation robes were blue and were embroidered with fleur-de-lis. Napoleon arrived at his coronation wearing a robe of purple velvet and then changed into a robe of red velvet, both of which were embroidered with bees. There was an interesting reason for the bees that harked back to the distant past. In 1653, the tomb of an early Frankish king, the Merovingian ruler Childeric I, was found in Tournai in present-day Belgium. Among the glorious grave goods found within the tomb were 300 gold and garnet bees. They were believed to have been mounts on Childeric's robe. The grave goods were given to Louis XIV as a gift, and in Napoleon's time they were lodged in the Bibliothèque Nationale. Jean-Jacques de Cambacérès, who had been Napoleon's second consul and was Arch-Chancellor of the Empire, suggested that the bees would make a superb symbol of the new French Empire, connecting it back to the earliest days of Francia. Sadly, most of the Childeric treasure that inspired this decoration, apart from a couple of the bees, was stolen in 1831 and never recovered. The robes themselves were left behind in Notre Dame after the coronation, and it is said that they were destroyed in 1819. However, there was a purple imperial robe in the London collection of Madame Tussaud, which was allegedly sold by the cathedral authorities of Notre Dame to her. Of purple velvet, it could be the purple robe Napoleon wore on the way to his coronation. It was recently sold by Christie's. Under these fine mantles, the emperor wore a tunic of white satin, and this still survives. It is now in the Napoleon Museum at the Palace of Fontainebleau. Decorated with gold work with a frieze and heavy tassels along the hem, it is decorated with stars, thunderbolts, crowns, and friezes of oak leaves and palm leaves. When it came to the moment of his anointing, Napoleon stood before the Pope wearing only this tunic. Napoleon's coronation sword is also now in the museum at Fontainebleau. It wasn't made specifically for the coronation, but was made in 1801 during Napoleon's time as first consul. The hilt of the sword was designed to be studded with the large diamonds, prominent among which was the famous Regent diamond, which had once adorned the crown of Louis XV. Between 1797 and 1798, the diamond had been pawned and was in the hands of the Berlin entrepreneur Sigmund Otto Joseph von Tresco, who had been financing Napoleon's army, and he in turn sold that debt to the Dutch banker Vandenberg in Amsterdam. In 1801, Napoleon managed to redeem the stone. After Napoleon's fall, the stone was removed from the sword, and this is now in the Louvre. Napoleon commissioned the silversmith Jean-Baptiste Claude Audiet to create the sword. The blade was the work of the Parisian bladesmith Nicolas Noël Bouteille. The hilt of the sword and the setting of the stones was undoubtedly the work of Marie-Etienne Niteau and his son Francois Regnault Niteau, who were Napoleon's court jewellers. Over all these robes, the emperor wore the collar of the Grand Master of the Imperial Order he had founded in 1802, the Légion d'honneur. This collar, also made by B&A, is now at Fontainebleau too. The gold collar is made up of 16 medallions that represent the disciplines of the order's members: literature, sciences, arts, etc., etc. And this alternates with 16 imperial eagles. This is then framed with 2 rows of chain, the links decorated with both Merovingian bees and stars. The whole collar is joined at the bottom with a large wreathed N, from which is suspended an imperial crown and an enamel star, with Napoleon's profile in the centre, all framed again with laurel. The crown made for Napoleon's first empress Josephine was destroyed in 1819 and is only known from paintings. The most detailed representations we have of it are in François Gérard's coronation portrait of the empress and Jacques-Louis David's painting depicting the coronation of Napoleon, which shows the moment when Napoleon crowns his wife with this crown. Unlike Napoleon's crown, Josephine's crown is more traditional in style. Gold with 8 depressed arches topped with a mond and cross, it was seemingly set with coloured stones and also with rows of pearls. The circlet seems to have been surmounted with large pearls. Josephine's robes and her mantle matched those of her husband, and like his were kept at Notre Dame and have also been lost. The only object from her regalia to survive is her coronation ring, made by the jeweller Marguerite, and once set with a ruby but now set with a garnet. This has survived as it was handed down within the imperial family. It was once in the possession of Jerome, the emperor's brother, and he gave it to his daughter-in-law, Princess Mary Clotilde of Savoy. Since 1979 it has been in the collection of the Château de Malmaison, Josephine's residence. So there you go. Napoleon's new imperial regalia was idiosyncratic, to say the least, but he understood very well the potent power of ceremonial and display to create a sense of political cohesion and to express symbolically both historical continuity and new political aspirations, and his regalia does just that. Thanks for watching. If you enjoy this channel, you're bound to enjoy my magazine, The Antiquary. Published every month, it is a labour of love for me, and in it I explore some of the more obscure aspects of our shared history, all beautifully illustrated in full colour. It ships across the world, is offered in print and digital format, and readers give it 5 stars on Google. If you love your history like me, particularly the history of objects, buildings, people and places, why not consider subscribing? Subscribing helps support my work and the channel too. There's a link above and in the video description that takes you to the magazine website.